This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Hello, Place to Be Nation, and welcome to the very first episode of Totally Rank, the podcast that puts your nostalgic opinions in order. I'm Scott Grimes, and I will be hosting an episode every month here on the Pop Experience. Each time I'll bring on a special guest to help me wax poetic about all things music. The way it's going to work is pretty simple. My guests and I will both rank our 10 best songs from a specific calendar year. Today we'll be counting down the top songs of 1980 from 10 to 1. Before we get the countdown started, though, I need to introduce my guest, although I'm not sure anything I say will do him any justice. If you're listening to this, you probably already know who he is, and if you don't, I'm sure you'll want to hear more of him after this. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Scott Criscuolo. Scott, please introduce yourself, and I guess if anyone is listening that hasn't listened to you before, let them know who you are and what you're all about.
Scott, it's a pleasure to be here on your maiden voyage. It's not often. I love music, and it's always great to have fresh content on any of our quad of pods. And we needed a banging music show on the Pop Experience, and the purveyor Andy Atherton and I have always talked about how to do a really good music show, music history show, because nobody wants to talk about the music now. It's all about talking history, because the music then is much better than the music now. And so I'm happy to be here. For those that don't know me, I am the purveyor of the place to be, the PTB Wrestling Network, which is our flagship feed. It's all wrestling, and we're now coming up on, in February, it'll be 12 years that the feed's been hot. So the Pop feed, I think, has been up about 6 years, I think now. 7. And we're just a great family. We love to have fun. We love to talk all things pop culture. And it's an honor to be on with you, Scott. Number one, because you're a Scott and we're all amazing podcasters. And secondly, again, I love talking music, and I've always wanted the closest that I get to talk about music is on the Year in Pop, which is a show that I've done with Andy and for the first 18 episodes with J. Arsenio D'Amato and the Dr. G. George Oblino. We're trying to get that show back in circulation. That, of course, show is it's kind of like this show that you'll be doing, except in this case, it's about everything. We talk about everything in a calendar year: TV, movies, sports, that kind of thing. But I'm excited to be on a show where we just talk about great music, whether it's pop, rock, hip hop, R&B, jazz, I don't care. Chamber music, choir. No, I'm only kidding. Hymns. No.
I'm not going to judge your list, buddy.
Yes. My number one song is Gifts of Finest Wheat. No, I'm just kidding. No. I'm happy to be here. I love talking music, and I appreciate the invite, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to be my inaugural guest here, and we'll work out the kinks and just make sure that things go smoothly. So no one I'd rather have on. I've listened to, Place to Be Nation for 5-6 years now. Huge fan of all the different channels, all the different shows, and so it's really an honor for me to be a part of the family. You guys have welcomed me with open arms, and I feel like the least I can do is do my part and deliver some good quality content for everyone, and hopefully people like it, and we'll keep this thing going. I've got some grandiose plans here to release each month, and it'll take a while before we get to anything current, and then when that happens, I'll figure out how to maybe go backwards so that we don't have to talk about the crap that's up today.
Exactly. If we have to do a top 10,
1980 was kind of a good spot to start, just because you get more of a variety of styles of music in the 80s, and I think it's regardless of your age, there's usually something that you've heard of from the 80s, whether you're Gen Z, Gen X, or a millennial. I feel like the 80s is a good time for everyone.
There's no doubt. In my opinion, it's the best decade ever. Even though I was born in the 70s, to me, everything about the 1980s was great. I loved the television. I loved the movies. I loved the music. I was a Mets fan, so the one year I love sports. I am a Notre Dame fan, so one year I love college football. No, but I mean, just everything about the 80s was great. I mean, we there was kind of a malaise in our country in the late 70s. Music was great if you like disco, but the 80s had a little bit of everything, and I'm looking forward to your next 9 episodes after this one to go through the whole decade. And the 80s had some, I would say the 80s had the least stinkers of any decade. So it's going to be hard to find a bad song. I'm sure there are, but even the bad songs are fun. So, yeah, agreed. I think it's a great time to start.
It's going to be a lot of one-hit wonders, a lot of hair metal, and I'm really excited for all of it.
Yes, me too.
All right. So let's get going. So the way this is going to start, the way it's going to go is we're both just going to go back and forth and count down from 10 to 1. And then at the end, we can, reveal any, misses or things that almost made the cut. Feel free to call me out if you think one of my choices is bogus and it's a horrible song. Please, the more we can do that, the more fun it's going to be for everyone. So,
absolutely.
I will not hesitate to do the same.
Please do. We all need to be straightened out for all of it, for those that like too much, Mickey by Tony Basil. So
yes, exactly. Before we start the countdown, though, tell me a little bit about what your criteria was making the list. Did you, were you looking at Billboard charts? Was it all purely just based on your nostalgic opinions? What method did you take to compile?
Well, what I did was I found the top, the year-end Hot 100 singles of 1980, because I don't remember all of them. A lot of that is pop, obviously. Now 1980 was an interesting year because we were kind of out of disco by then, but there was still some wisps of disco kind of enveloped into new wave. I feel like the first 3 years of the 80s was still kind of a piece of the 70s. I feel like we really didn't get into the true 80s until 1983. I've always considered 1983 to 1987 really the wheelhouse of the decade. But 1980 was a funny year because you had a lot of changes in music. You had some, obviously, the year in music was very sad at the end, of course, with the assassination of John Lennon, which kind of really, kind of killed the buzz of the year, unfortunately. And for those that don't live in the Northeast, who do live in the Northeast, feel free to go to Strawberry Field, or Strawberry Park, I guess it's technically called now, in Central Park with the Imagine, where John, I think, is buried. Is he buried under it? I don't know. But anyway, it's, my point is 1980 was an up and down year, and it ended sadly on a down, but we had some great music, and a lot of it I did nostalgic for me because I remember it on the radio as a kid, but I could have picked a lot of, real stinkers, which maybe I'll do on the back end when I do my honorable mentions. But a lot of the songs were a combination of ones that were legitimate successes that I knew did very well, and songs that hit that were hot on the radio. One song that's in my top 10 is memorable, not because of the artist, but because it's probably one of the best soundtracks on one of the worst movies ever made that came out that year. So that's a little tease as to what one of the songs in my top 10 is. My music opinions are they're very straightforward, Scott, but at the same time, I think I try to give respect to things that sometimes get disrespected. And that's another song on my list by a legendary artist who sadly is no longer with us either. But he's going to get some props from me tonight for a song and an album that I think doesn't get enough credit. So a lot of it was success. A lot of it was personal tastes, but a decent amount of it was paying respect to great songs that may not be remembered by many when you look back at 1980 as a year. So I tried to do that as well. But most of the songs that I think are on my top 10, I'm going to take a guess that maybe 6 are on yours. I think I'm going to take a guess that I think maybe you and I have 4 songs that are different. That's my take. I have a good feeling. So
it'll be good to see if we have some variety there. Listeners, if you're listening along, keep track of how many duplicates we have. So the way we'll do it is, if you name one and it's higher on my list, I'll say it's higher, and that way we can wait to really talk about it, so that we don't have to talk about it twice.
Right.
And then we'll just keep going. But guest is always going to go first on here, so whenever you're ready to unveil your number 10, go for it.
Okay. My number 10 is a great new wave song that probably, just typing it here, that is definitely a one-hit wonder, but I think is a song that's memorable. I think the song became more popular the following year when MTV started. I look forward to whoever your 1981 guest is, because he or she is going to be very lucky to get to talk about the beginning of MTV. But a lot of songs that even came out in 78, 79 would get hot in 81. This was one of them. My number 10 song is Cars by Gary Newman. It's a classic new wave hit from the album The Pleasure Principle. It's a song that sticks in your head. Here in my car, I feel safest of all. It stays in your head once you hear it. To me, it was a bookmark of the year in new wave, kind of enveloping out of disco and even out of punk, because by 1980 even punk got old. And you were getting these kind of new wave artsy bands. Like even Bowie at this point, after the Berlin sessions, he was in that new wave phase. And even though probably he may have had one more album after this, Gary Newman, kind of stamped the decade for me in terms of, marking the alternative sound that we would hear later in the first half of the decade from bands like Depeche Mode and, like Joy Division and the Smiths and bands like that. So I love this song. It's catchy. It was the song that MTV jumped on when Gary Newman made the video. And if a song sticks in your head, it deserves to be in the top 10. So I got to put Gary Newman on the list because it's a song that marked the beginning of the decade in terms of new wave.
It's such a fun song,
right?
It's got the new wave beat. Even if you don't know the artist, right, or even necessarily the name of the song, you know it just from the. You move your head to it. It's one of those things that like you said, once it's in your head, it stays there for a few days.
Almost half.
And I think that's the mark of a good 80s song. Yeah, it's
absolutely,
it's definitely there for a while. So
yeah,
that's a great start. I mean, that's a great way to usher in the show. I think that's a great inaugural pick. I think a lot of people would agree with that. Did not make my list. It's not for lack of enjoyment. It's a song I certainly enjoy. I have a song that I think is a little bit similar on my list. So I think maybe I tried to stay away from songs that sounded the same. I try to have a little bit of diversity to my list. I try not to do more than one artist twice, because certainly there were some artists who had some huge years in 1980.
Oh yeah,
multiple singles that I really enjoyed, but I tried to really stay away from that. I got lucky because a couple of the singles were actually 1981, so I was able to kind of move them over to that list for next time. So but I'm moving to my number 10 because and I love this because it's very, very, very different Cars by Gary Newman.
Okay.
I started out with something that is very, very corny, very hokey. I think it's from a band that a lot of people. I think a lot of people they're synonymous with like cheesy sort of love ballads. With that sort of stigma that you put it in a movie soundtrack or something of that nature. But it's just one that, for whatever reason, when I was looking at this list, I said, I remember that song, and I really enjoyed listening to it. And then I put it on earlier today, and I was belting it out as if, it's something I do on a regular basis. It's from the band Air Supply, and it is the song All Out of Love.
Ah, love that song. I will never disrespect Air Supply, brother. Never disrespect Air Supply. Never.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, think of Making Love Out of Nothing at All as kind of their maybe a little bit bigger one, which is the real sort of belty, pop ballad one. But this one's right up there with it as far as, the vocals that are in that song. The lyrics are really easy, really corny, right? They're not reinventing the wheel or anything with the lyrics of this song, but it just works. It's just, you see the crush, right? You see you're in 7th grade, you see the girl you're crushing on, and she breaks your heart, or she goes to the dance with another boy, and all of a sudden this is the soundtrack to your life type of song, right? I'm all out of love, I'm so lost without you. It's just fun. It's a great song to just put on if you're in that type of mood. If you want to watch a rom-com and you want a song that kind of goes alongside that, Air Supply is perfect for that. So it's my number 10 for that reason. I think it's a good way to kick off my list. I'm just going to leave it out. I had to throw some respect on Air Supply's name.
I'm lying alone with my head on the phone, thinking of you till it hurts. That's it, man. That's pain.
That's every middle school boy's poem right
absolutely.
there.
I did not have it on my list, and now I feel bad that I didn't, but I have all the love in the world for Air Supply. They were one of those bands that, first of all, they're now technically, I guess, designated yacht rock, and no one will ever, I will die on the yacht rock hill forever. If you know me, if you know my PIC, Mr. Rozzero, and everybody else here at Place B Nation, we are yacht rock junkies. So I have zero issue with Air Supply whatsoever. The fact that they both had the name Russell in their name. One's first name was Russell and one's last name was Russell. I always thought that was funny. I remember the album, which I think came out the following year. I remember it as a kid, The One That You Love, which is the album after All Out of Love. And I remember because the cover was a hot air balloon, which I always remembered as a kid when my mom had the album and my sister had the cassette. All Out of Love was one before that, obviously, that came out this year. And actually, All Out of Love is my favorite Air Supply song. So, dude, you're not getting any argument out of me. And this song is that song that probably, if you were slightly older than I was, because my school dance crushes wasn't until probably 85, but people like my brother, who was in 7th grade in 1980, probably was in that boat with this song. But Air Supply is just, they deserve the props. They were pop giants from like 79 to 84. You couldn't, and they weren't, people say, oh, they're corporate. I hope we get to talk about some topics like this down the line. I hate the term corporate rock because it just makes me sick. Nobody does anything for free. Okay. And Air Supply might have been corporate pop, but you know what? Chicks dug it. Guys liked it because chicks dug it. All right. That's it. And they were the precursor to what we would see later in the decade from even power ballads like Bon Jovi or anybody like that. So Air Supply, obviously a little heavier, but Air Supply definitely set the tone for the decade in terms of love songs like, Always by Atlantic Starr and, bands and songs like that. Like you're not going to get any argument from me that Air Supply is a band that needs to be respected. So I love that pick. I absolutely love that pick.
Perfect. Great. Let's go. Let's move on right along to number 9.
All right. Number 9 is a fantastic song. Sadly, this guy probably had like 3 or 4 really solid hits. And then MTV, he was probably one of the few people that MTV hurt because, he didn't exactly have the look. So my number 9 song is Ride Like the Wind by Christopher Cross because that song is a badass song that I've heard. There's a here in Connecticut, there's a Harley Davidson dealership upstate that used the song since it came out pretty much. So for the last 40 years, they use it in their radio ads. For you Connecticut people, it's Brothers Harley Davidson up in, I think it's Brantford. And they've been using Ride Like the Wind in their ads for 40 years. And it's a killer song, and it's got a groove, and his voice is amazing. It's one of those songs that you could like play in the car, and you might hit the gas a little heavier. It's kind of like Radar Love by Golden Earring. It's like one of those songs that maybe makes your foot a little heavier on the gas in the car, and that's how I feel. And obviously he would have great songs in the next couple of years. He'd have probably one of the best movie soundtrack songs ever from the movie Arthur. And then MTV came along, and then you looked at him, and he kind of looked like us, and it's like, and who, what I'm saying? Like, he didn't look like George Michael. He didn't look like, any of those like typical single, solo artists like
he was no Rick Springfield, and
no, he was no Rick Springfield. Thank you. That's what his name escaped me. He's no Rick Springfield. So sadly, even though he still sold a lot of albums, MTV kind of killed him because they're like, oh, look at this big linebacker looking guy. You know what I'm saying? And it's sad because the guy had a great set of pipes, and he could write killer pop songs. So my number 9 is Ride Like the Wind by Christopher Cross, because it was always on the radio. Businesses used it. It's just a good, solid, fast pop song.
It is a really good song, and he is an underrated artist that, like you mentioned, doesn't get a lot of the credit. Certainly did not fit the demographic of MTV, and it just wasn't someone that was going to have the mainstream success at that time, unfortunately, going up against some of the other pop titans, right? The male pop titans of the decade. You weren't going to lump him in with your Princes and Michael Jacksons and George Michaels. It just wasn't going to happen, unfortunately, based on the lack of marketability. But voice was great. I actually think that had he first come out about 10 years after, he probably would have been a little bit more successful, because MTV wasn't as new, and they were, doing more like Michael Bolton, for example, right? That type of Richard Marx. It was similar type of music that got more popular in the late 80s, early 90s. Right. That type of music. I actually feel like he probably would have. He'd be remembered a little bit better, I think, if this song came out in 1990 and not 1980.
Good point.
They weren't as obsessed with brand new what's on MTV, new wave, all that stuff that was going on, where this was more expected. There was a lot more of this type of music that was more of the norm. So I actually think that's kind of what he suffers from. I think he was just a little bit too early for mainstream success, but it's still a great song, like you mentioned, and he's a great artist, and I think a lot of people really enjoy, like, Sailing is a great song, and some of his other ones. But yeah, this one's good. It's a lot of fun, like you said. It gives you that little bit of adrenaline boost that you're looking for. So I have no issues with this, and I think that a lot of people would agree that this should be close to, if not in the top 10.
Yeah, I was torn because I didn't want to do two songs by one artist in my list, and this just nipped Sailing, which is the other awesome song. But I did not want to. I couldn't put both, so I took the faster song. But Sailing, if we talk honorable mentions later, it just missed it. But I felt that's the better song from him, so that's why I put it on there.
Yeah, awesome. Excellent. I think we're off to a good start. I'm going to keep it rolling with my number 9. And I have to admit, I think this is a little bit based. I think I have some recency bias here for unfortunate circumstances, because I went back and I listened to the song, and I don't necessarily think that it's one of the 10 best songs of 1980, but I really wanted to give some love and some attention to the artist, because I feel like she deserves it, because we recently lost her, and I think that her album Xanadu, one of the better albums of that time frame. So my number 9 is Magic by Olivia Newton-John. It's one of those songs, the verses are pretty nondescript. I mean, they're not going to blow your socks off, but once you get to the hook and really the chorus, the Got to Believe We're Magic, I think everyone pretty much knows that part. You could really sing along to it. It really hits that groove that you're looking for from her a couple of years after Grease. You distinctively hear the hook and okay, that's Olivia Newton-John. I know that voice. It's very recognizable. Got a nice little groove to it. Obviously, there's some other songs from her groove a little bit more that I know I'll talk about in future episodes. But Magic is just fun. Rest in peace, Olivia Newton-John. I wanted to show her some respect. My mom is a huge Olivia Newton-John fan, so I grew up listening to my mom belt out this song as well as some of her others, and so I have a lot of nostalgic just respect and adoration for this song particularly and Olivia Newton-John. So I really would have been remiss had I not put it somewhere on my list. I think it's just fun. It's just one of those songs that, if it comes on, I'll keep it on and I'll move to it a little bit, and then I'll move on to something else. But I think this is a good representation of 1980 as far as the type of music that was popular at the time. Again, she became one of the titans of that genre in the early 80s, and I think this is one of her trademark classic hits.
You're not going to... I can't believe I'm about to say this. I have it higher.
You do.
I do. So I'm gonna. I know. I got a lot to say. I got to be honest with you, brother. I got a lot to talk about Xanadu, so I'm gonna hold off.
Okay, sounds good. So we'll just move on to your number 8.
Okay, my number 8. This song is another one that I think, and I know the band. Well, except for the lead singer, the band hates it. Most of them do, and it caused a lot of friction for them over the coming years, which ultimately led to their breakup later in the 80s. But it's a great song, and I think it's a timestamp for the soft side of the band because they had some killer hard songs. But this is probably their cornerstone, which is an album of theirs, song from them. So my number 8 is "Babe" by Styx.
That's a good one.
I love Styx, but if you know their history, you know that Dennis D. Young and Tommy Shaw never saw eye to eye a lot on band direction. Tommy Shaw was a rocker. He played killer guitar. He had flowing blonde hair. He was a good looking dude, and he would play songs like "Too Much Time on My Hands" and but Dennis D. Young he was getting hits, and "Babe" is a hit, and if we were doing if we were doing an episode in the 70s, I most definitely would have "Come Sail Away" on my list.
Oh yeah.
Great song. But I love "Babe" because it's another soft song, but it's got a killer voice by Dennis D. Young. It's got a good feel to it, and it's kind of like a sequel to their song, "Lady," which came out much earlier in the 70s. But I just feel like it's a song that marks Styx in the 80s. I mean, later, I'm sure when you get to a future episode, somebody's going to bring up Mr. Roboto, which is kind of like the bookmark for them later in the decade. But I am a big proponent of slow, sexy rock, and I feel "Babe" is that kind of song. I have a couple of honorable mentions similar to that, but this song is the best of that. So my number 8 is "Babe" by Styx.
I like that. I think it's good to have some representation of Styx in this countdown. I think, like you mentioned, they were huge in the 70s and carried the success and the momentum into the 80s. Certainly one of those quintessential bands when you think, early to mid 70s and then into the 80s. Styx is definitely one that stands out there. So it's good to have some representation of them on the list. I agree. It kind of is a continuation of "Lady," and I mean that in a good way, because "Lady" is a great song. So I would agree with you there. I do think that of their songs, if I had to put one of their songs on the list, probably would be "Babe." I would agree with you. I do think it's that kind of soft love song, but it's not one of those like love songs that you don't tell your friends you like. Right?
Exactly.
This one you can kind of hold your head high,
right?
Because they like it too, right? So you don't have to feel shameful for this one. So I think that's a good spot for that.
Yeah, right. I agree.
My number 8, "It's Time to Come Together," Scott, because my number 8 is "Celebration" by Kool and the Gang.
Great song.
It's, I mean, this is everyone's song that you hear at weddings and birthday parties, right? And quinceañeras and whatever it is that's going on, you're going to hear this song. This is universally known, universally liked, and universally bopped to, right? I mean, you almost can't hear the song without moving some part of the party. It's just fun. Is it, again, the greatest song that's ever been written? No, of course not, lyrically, but it's just fun. It's got the beat, the groove. It just signifies a good time. And who doesn't want to look back at 1980 and think about good times and having fun and just celebrating things? I mean, literally, you can use it for anything. It's in commercials. It's in pop culture. This is a song that you can't escape. This is everywhere. There's probably not a person with ears that doesn't know this song in some way, shape, or form, because it really is bigger than music. Really, it really is kind of a pop culture phenomenon. And I think that I couldn't not put it on my list. I had it at 10. I moved things up and down a little bit, and it kind of landed at number 8 because, again, the songs I have ahead of it I think are better actual songs, but I just think this song is just a lot of fun, and I can't think of a time where I've heard this song where it didn't instantly put me in a good mood and increase, my levels of happiness.
First off, once again, you'll never get an argument out of me of any Kool and the Gang song, because Kool and the Gang kicks ass. So I love Celebration. It's on my honorable mention. I got a story about Celebration. When I was in radio, I had a buddy of mine and I had to put together a vignette when the Yankees won the '96 World Series, and he used. And he was a Yankee fan, of course. I'm a Met fan, so I was, pardon me, sorry to go off camera. I was ambivalent to it because I'm a Met fan, but we did use Celebration. So every time I hear that song, I think of John Sterling calling the last out of the World Series to the Braves. So that song is just, again, you could do it for anything. You could do it for a wedding, you could do it for graduation, you could do it when you win a championship. I'm sure sports teams have used it. So I agree with you 100%. That is a fantastic choice, because that's a song. It's Kool and the Gang's probably their biggest hit. I know some people may say Joanna, but that's a little slower. This is just a banger because it also was a good time in the decade because it's the beginning of the decade, so you're celebrating the start of a new decade. Great pick, man. Great pick. I love that song, and it's a song that reminds everyone of good times. Whether again it's a personal thing, a sports thing, So I like that pick a lot, and I love Kool and the Gang. And if I do future episodes with you, I will have more Kool and the Gang. And I'm sure whoever you have between now and 19, I think they broke up in 87, I think, or 88. They're going to have there's probably going to be at least 5 or 6 more Kool and the Gang songs mentioned. So great pick.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about them a lot more.
Yeah, love that pick.
All right, cool. Hey, so far so good. We haven't hated each other's picks. If you were listening to this and you're expecting drama, sorry guys, we're on the same page here. So you'll have to keep listening to see if either Scott rips the other Scott a new one.
Well, I guess it's my time for my number 7. This was a tough one because this may be. I may break a rule of yours, so you might get mad at me. You might get mad at me at this one because I'm going to break your. I'm going to break your artist having more than one song. On the
it's
top
not
10.
A rule. It's more of that's completely fine.
Well, as everyone knows, this guy. If you listen to my pods, regardless of topic, could be wrestling, whatever. Everyone knows I love this artist. He is my favorite solo artist of all time. I have seen him live 13 times. That's nothing compared to my co-host on the NWA Saturday Special. Dr. G's seen this guy almost 30 times. And he had an album that came out in 1980 that's just a landmark album for him. So this is the first of 2 from this guy on my list. At number 7 is You May Be Right by Billy Joel. The first of 2. I won't tell you where the other one is. But Glass Houses is an amazing album in his catalog. It was a change of pace for him after The Stranger, the breakout album, The Stranger in 1977, and then arguably probably my favorite album ever, which is 52nd Street in 1978. Billy has always been a guy who always had the pulse of what was going on in music. And he realized 1980, nobody wanted another album of, piano standards talking about, restaurants and pizza joints and New Yorkie stuff. He did that for 2 straight albums. So he and Phil Ramone were trying to get the heartbeat of music. And he realized, well, we're getting into new wave. I talked about Gary Newman earlier. And so he wanted to make an album that was hard and kind of synthy. And he put out Glass Houses in 1980. And that's another album that literally every song is great. So I couldn't not have 2 Billy songs in the top 10. The one that was more successful will be in my list later, but this one is just a personal favorite because it broke the mold for him. And fitting that it's the first song on the album, and the song opens with glass breaking. No, Steve Austin doesn't come out, but he breaks the glass and he's breaking the ceiling of what he did before. And I love the one thing I love about Billy Scott is that, and you appreciate this being, a East Coaster, that when he does like inside lines on stuff around us that no one else knows, I kind of dig that. I like being in the know. So my favorite 2 lines are, I got stranded in the combat zone. I walked through Bedford-Stuyvesant alone. Like, I've told people, like, where the hell are those places? Well, the combat zone's in Boston. And of course, Bed-Stuy is a neighborhood in Brooklyn. And if you're not from here, you don't know where it is, and you kind of chuckle. But it's a great song. It's hard. It's heavy. It's actually the song that he ends his concerts with now. It's in the encore. And just a great, fast, hard song that is a change of pace for him and makes the album that much better. So You May Be Right by Billy Joel is my number 7.
I think that's a great pick. I'm pretty sure the other one that you're talking about is in my honorable mentions because I just think it's just a really, really fun song. Some people only do Eddie Joel, I've been told. So, his 70s stuff is great, but there are some people who only prefers 80s Joel. If you've seen Step Brothers, they only do 80s Joel. So,
yep.
But I think it's a great pick. I think it's good to have Billy Joel represented on our list more than once because he is just a great artist, a well-renowned artist. A lot of, you don't hear too many people say a lot of bad things about his music. I mean, people will say, some of his songs might be a little, maybe, I guess, boring, right? If like you said, if you don't really get it, right? If you're not inside, like I can understand. Some people say that, his songs are a little boring, but I mean, to each their own, of course. But I think it's good to have him represented here. It is funny that you mentioned, sort of the inside references that he makes. It makes you feel like, he's an artist for you, right? He's an East Coast artist, and that's who he's targeting. And he doesn't really, he's not really going outside of his box. He remembers where he came from. It's a pretty humble approach, actually, if you think about it. He's making music for his people. Right. I think that's, he's not trying to necessarily appeal to the masses, which I think is his kind of whole shtick, right? He wasn't trying to be this ultra mega pop star, some of the other contemporaries of the time. So I think that, this song, these songs, that album sort of sticks right where he is, where he's been. Very consistent, never really did anything, for the sake of doing it. So a lot of respect for Billy Joel as an artist and as a person, and I'm glad to put him on the list.
I think for most of us that are listening probably know that I was going to have him anyway, so I'm going to get a good chuckle out of most of Place to Be Nation because they knew that I was going to put him somewhere. So it won't be the last time on any episode that Billy Joel will be on a list. So thank you. I appreciate it. For sure.
All right, my number 7 is by probably one of the most well-known and successful artists of all time. And this is a song that, we mentioned kind of disco, right, in the late 70s, and this is kind of one of those carryover sort of disco tracks. You can kind of tell it was probably Donna Summer inspired because it kind of has that type of sound to it. And it's just a song that for some reason I just dance when I hear it. I just can't help but to start moving my head and moving my shoulders a little bit and really getting into a groove. Because it's just a fun song. It's another one I really have to credit my mom to because she would just play this all over and over again. And so I've heard this song more times than I can count. And that's Upside Down by Diana Ross.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just a fun song. I think the way that she delivers it, the way that she sings it, I think is great. Only a way that she could do it. If that song's released by someone else, I don't think it's nearly as good. I just think the way that she sings it just brings it up a little bit. But I do. It's got that nice sort of groove, and it's just a fun sort of, not necessarily post-disco, because there's certainly still a lot of disco in 1980, 1981, 1982. So it's not post-disco, but it's certainly on the back half of the popularity for disco. But it's probably, if I were just doing an entire episode of disco songs or disco-inspired songs, this would still make my list. I just think it's a lot of fun. I think she sings it well, and it's just something that I remember hearing a lot as a kid and thinking to myself, hey, I really like this. This is fun. This is something I'm really enjoying. So Diana Ross, Upside Down, number 7.
I'm gonna. This should be an interesting one. We're not gonna have a debate here, but I'm gonna say this. Personally, I've never been the biggest Diana Ross fan. But again, I am going to do what you did, and I'm going to credit my mom, because my mom is the biggest, and she's still alive. My mom is the biggest disco fan you could ever meet, and she loved Donna. She had Donna Summer all over, the Bee Gees. Oh my God! If we were doing a Saturday Night Fever episode, we'll be through the roof. But she liked Diana Ross. Diana Ross never totally did it for me, but there is something about that specific song, though, that I like. It's got that early 80s. That's one of those songs. You know why I like that song, Scott? Because that specific song was on the radio when I was a kid, and I remember driving to there's an amusement park in Massachusetts, right past the state line. Now it's Six Flags over New England, but when I was a kid, it was called Riverside. And every time for like 3 years, from like 80 to 82, I feel like whenever our family drove there on a Sunday for the day for a family trip, I either heard Upside Down, Biggest Part of Me by Ambrosia, or a Pointer Sister song. Like those three were always on the radio whenever I was driving to Massachusetts, and Upside Down's one of them. And I'm like, Upside Down, boy, you turn me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's kind of a good little. And because I've always considered Diana Ross kind of like, she might have come up with the term diva, but that song doesn't have that, like that the song from Mahogany, that Do You Know Where You're Going, like, doesn't have that pompous kind of I'm Diana Ross feel. It was kind of like a song she kind of went in and like, you know what, I got to go with the times right now and get groovy. So I like that pick, actually. I like that pick a lot because I didn't even think about it. That's my shocker. I don't think the Olivia Newton-John thing that we have is as big a shock as you putting Diana Ross on this list. I am very impressed. But again, her personally, I'm not crazy about, but that song I like because it was a radio staple when I was a kid, and it has kind of a good shimmy to it. So good pick. I like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is for me too. It's, am I a huge Diana Ross fan? No. Do I respect her talent and her contributions to music? Absolutely. But this song, like you said, this is just fun. I think she was just adapting to the times and was like, oh, this is what, Donna Summer's doing, and this is what some of the other artists are doing. She almost reinvented herself a little bit, right? Because this was a big departure from some of the stuff she was doing with the Supremes. And so I think she kind of adapted with the times, and we got this gem out of it. And yeah.
Yep, I concur. We're on a roll. We're doing pretty good.
So far so good. I think that we've got a lot of good songs on here, and I think it's been pretty eclectic thus far. So hopefully, if you're listening, there's been at least something you can kind of hang your hat on so far, and if not, keep listening because we've got at least one more Billy Joel and a ton of other stuff coming up.
That's right, we do. All right, so what am I up to? Number 6. This song I tried to make this song higher. I'm just typing it, so I tried to make this song higher, and other stuff, not only did I like a little better, but were probably better songs, but I'm not going to disrespect this band because they kick ass. They're heavy as hell, but this song had a nostalgic feel to it when it came out, and I think it was the next song after the song that came out earlier in the 70s that marked these guys as legendary, not just rock, but pop artists. So my number 6 is Crazy Little Thing Called Love by Queen. Obviously, at the time, if you're a rock fan, you know Queen, undoubtedly. But as a pop fan, other than probably Bohemian Rhapsody to that point, didn't really hear much Queen. I mean, maybe Fat Bottom Girls or Bicycle Race, but even those were very fringy for pop. Rock junkies like myself, and I'm sure we all know all the great Queen hits. There's no doubt about that. Even the album cuts like Seven Seas Awry. But Crazy Little Thing Called Love, because I remember the video when it came out the following year when MTV started, and Freddie was, all kind of pompadoured up from the 50s kind of thing. I think not only did it accentuate his singing ability, but it gave the guys, the rest of the band, a different light. Brian May is arguably one of the best guitarists of all time, but it wasn't a heavy song for him. The John Deacon, killer, and of course Roger Taylor, the drummer, just all great musicians and a very different song for them. And it's a feel good. And every time I hear it on Sirius XM, it's kind of like Upside Down by Diana Ross. It's like you want to turn it off. You're like, I'm not in the Diana Ross mood, but you can't help yourself. That is the mark of a great pop song. Even if you're not a big fan of the artist, you're like, I don't feel like listening to Queen. I just listened to Day at the Races, but you can't help it. You can't help yourself. That is the mark of a great pop song. And throughout this wonderful show that you're going to host, and we have here on the pop feed, there are going to be tons of songs like that where you're like, I can't help myself. I just got to shimmy. Yeah. And that Queen song for me is it. So Crazy Little Thing Called Love at number 6.
Yeah, there are more of those later on my list that are coming up, I'm sure, that, in that same vein. Well, Scott, your number 6 is a Queen song. My number 6 is a Queen song as well, but mine is Another One Bites the Dust. Which is also just another classic, iconic.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those that you hear the title and everyone does what you just did, right?
Yep.
Immediately in your head, it's dun, 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 dun. It's just, honestly, if that song was an instrumental and it was just that, I think it would still be on my list. Just of how catchy and infectious that beat is. And then you throw in Freddie Mercury's vocals. I mean, the way he comes into those verses, just with the tone of his voice and the high notes that he's hitting. I mean, that song's so much fun. I thought this is certainly going to be in my top 5 because it's Queen. It's Another One Bites the Dust. It's such an iconic song. And then as I started to compile my list, some of them was pushed ahead of it. But I knew this would be somewhere on my list. I knew I'd have Queen. I kind of figured you'd have some Queen somewhere, and Queen was going to come up because 1980 was a great year for them musically. So it only made sense that they would be on here. I can't argue with yours. I think Crazy Little Thing Called Love is amazing. I think Another One Bites the Dust is amazing. We could have chosen other songs by them, and all of them would have fit on this list, and I don't think there'd be much debate because that's just how great of a band they are. I'm not going to say too much because, like you mentioned, I'm sure there'll be a lot of Queen on the first 5-6 episodes of the show, I anticipate. So I don't want to sound like a broken record already on the first episode, so I'll leave it at that. But your number 6 is Queen, my number 6 is Queen. We're rolling along, and I'm excited to see if we have any other duplicates. Maybe even if it's not the same song, same band or artist.
The best part about you picking that song is you inadvertently did some cross promoting, because of course most wrestling fans, when they think of Another One Bites the Dust, they of course think of WWE Hall of Famer the Junkyard Dog, because that was his song before Vince actually didn't want to pay for copyrights anymore. He's like, I'll pay for Eye of the Tiger, but that's the bottom line. And then he pretty much handed Hogan Real American. But when I was a kid, anytime I heard that, I thought of JYD shaking and strutting with the thump on his butt and and dancing with the kids in the crowd. And so I love that song. I absolutely love that song. And I do know for a fact that, and I love the movie. I have it. It's on my shelf in the other room on my Blu-ray shelf. I love the movie Bohemian Rhapsody. But from what I've heard, the story behind that song is a little creative license. But that's fine. I love the fantasy of the movie. But yeah, that song's a banger. I don't disagree with you at all on that. But think about that. That's what makes Queen great. Two completely different sounding songs. You got Crazy Little Thing Called Love, which kind of goes back to like the 50 doo-wop thing.
It's
and
like
then you
Elvis,
got Elvis. And then you got Another One Bites the Dust, which kind of has that little kind of Parliament funk kind of thing at the beginning. Mm-hmm. And he grooves it. And Freddie could sing both like nothing. And that's why Freddie, God rest his soul, is one of the greatest of all time. I love that pick. And I believe that's the Game album. I think it's the album that came out in 1980. So probably a top 10 selling album that year for that reason alone. Two absolute banger singles. I love that pick.
Same number 6s. Let's get into our top 5s here and see if we agree on some other things.
Yeah, well, here this number 5, and this is a respect thing for me, because we're talking about a guy who is arguably another one who's no longer with us, but is arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. Now, things that went on in his life still, even now that he's not with us anymore, still kind of linger in the air, and anybody can make their own personal decisions on that. But no one can argue the fact that this guy is one of the greatest pop artists of all time. And I'm glad, one of the many reasons, Scott, that I'm happy you have me on this episode is because I want to talk the crap out of this album as much as this song. My number 5 song is Rock With You by Michael Jackson, because I think as great as Thriller is an album, and you and I both know it, you and I probably have both owned it. I had it on vinyl. It's actually in a frame on my wall in the other room. Yeah, I think Off the Wall is one of the most disrespected and forgotten albums of the decade. And I think as great as Thriller is, and as good as Bad is, Off the Wall is a damn good album. And the year before, 79, when Don't Stop Till You Get Enough, which is a total wedding song in my life. I've danced that song with a few in me many times. That song is a banger. I know we always use that word to death, but Off the Wall, the title track, which also came out in 1980. I don't have that's in my honorable mentions, but Rock With You, every time I hear it, I go, man, God, this song is great. It's got a nice, smooth groove. Michael's kind of silky voice. And again, he does that throughout the whole album. She's Out of My Life. Fantastic. Next to, that's like my second favorite Michael slow song next to Human Nature on Thriller. But Rock With You is just, it's just so like, again, little disco, like you said, we're in the back end of disco. but it's got a good pop sound. And, you know, I feel like pre-Thriller Michael doesn't get the props he deserves. And I highly recommend anybody go on Apple Music, Spotify, whatever, find Off the Wall and listen to the whole thing from beginning to end. You will not be disappointed if you haven't. And my number 5 is Rock With You, although I could have put Off the Wall. Don't Stop Till You Get Enough technically came out in 79, so that doesn't count. But Rock With You is just a great song. It's got a good groove, and his voice is killer. And it's one of the last like disco-y vestiges that we get in the early part of the decade. So I was so happy to be able to talk about this tonight because I feel like Off the Wall as an album never gets the respect it deserves. And everybody talks about Thriller. And I think Off the Wall deserves a little love. So Rock With You by Michael at number 5.
I'm so happy that this is on your list, Scott, because personal things aside, Michael Jackson's my absolute favorite musical artist of all time. And I may find a way to have him come up on every single episode of the show, whether he released anything or not that year. Just because of, the mark he left on music, you can make the argument that
totally
he should be included on any sort of list, regardless of the year. So
totally.
This is in my honorable mentions only because I made the choice to sort of slow burn my Michael Jackson fandom on this show.
Okay.
Because I don't want it to get redundant because people are going to say, oh, it's another episode of Totally Ranked. Oh, we're going to hear Scott talk about Michael Jackson. And you know what? Yeah, you're right. You are. So I'm slow burning my way into it, but everything you said is accurate. I think this was actually the perfect way for him to sort of transition into an adult solo star. Right, because he had, band, and he had some of the other stuff that was solo outside of the Jackson 5, but this was really the introduction to him as an adult male pop artist, right? And I think Off the Wall album was a great way for him to usher in that era of his life and his career. I may alienate some people who are listening to this if you're not wrestling fans, but what you're saying about Off the Wall, to me, Off the Wall is Shawn Michaels, Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 19. It's an incredible match, but people go to Michael's Undertaker, Michael's Angle, Michael's Undertaker, right? That's if Michael's Taker from 25 is Thriller and Michael's Taker from 26 is bad and Michael's Angle is, dangerous, Off the Wall is Michael's Jericho, right? It's still an incredible, it's a banger.
I
but
love
people
that.
Don't necessarily go right to it.
Yep.
And I think that's
that.
what Off the Wall is, like you mentioned. Flawless, nearly perfect 5-star effort, but not the first 2 or 3 probably that are going to come up for most people if they're talking about his discography, which is more of a testament to how great he is and not how bad the album is, right? So
Shawn and
I'd rather have that's kind of when you were saying that I kind of thought to myself it's the maybe forgotten album of the GOAT of pop music, let's say. What's the not necessarily forgotten WrestleMania match of Shawn Michaels, because I'm sure people would like to forget, some of the other ones, but of all the Shawn Michaels WrestleMania bangers, if you will, it's one that maybe doesn't necessarily come up right away. You always hear Angle, you always hear Undertaker, the Undertaker matches. Some people really even like, Shawn and Vince. But, some people, again, sometimes overlook Shawn and Jericho at 19, which is on its own an incredible effort and one of the better Mania matches there is, just gets lost because it's maybe 4th or 5th on Michael's individual Mania matches. So,
yep.
Sorry for that, non-wrestling listeners, but I figured, Scott would appreciate that and understand it. So,
I love you, man. Gotta purvey, because it's the quadrupods, and when you take a right-hand turn from out of Andy's office, my office is the biggest one because I'm the senior guy. So then all the wrestling's on the wall. So, but that was awesome. Thank you. That made me smile.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Speaking of smiling, this next song makes me smile because I just think it's so much fun. It's a song that, again, everybody knows it. It's been covered a bunch, right? This is one of those songs that like modern bands have tried to cover, and none of it really does it justice. There was a TV show named after the title of this song, which is a forgotten Amanda Bynes sitcom that no one remembers or cares about. But my number 5 is What I Like About You by the Romantics. It's just a fun song. It's everyone, you can sing along to it. It's easy. It's simple to sing along to. This is something that, you can sing along to at age 5 or age 65. You know the words, and it's easy to sing along to. You just start with What I Like About You, and then you just start naming stuff. You keep me warm at night, etc. I just find it to be just a great, easy listen. Always enjoyable. There's never been a time where I've listened to this song and I felt like, oh, that was a waste of 3 minutes and 10 seconds, or however long the song is. I've just always enjoyed it. I think it's a great song. It has really stood the test of time. I think it still comes up. You'll still hear it again. Something that references the 80s. It still comes up. One of those fun songs, stands the test of time. Easy to sing. I like songs that are easy to sing along with, that are catchy and pretty simple. Because sometimes I'm in a mood where I don't feel like really, breaking down the lyrics and what did they mean when they were saying this? Sometimes you just want to put on a song, just enjoy the music, enjoy the beat, enjoy the instruments, and have nice, simple, fun lyrics. And I think this song encompasses all of that. So What I Like About You is my number 5.
It's funny. That song actually has a funny backstory here in my home state, because for those that are college basketball fans, UConn was not always this good or this well known, even throughout the 90s. Before 1990, UConn
good until like Daniel Marshall, right?
Yeah, they their first real big season was 89-90. They made it all the way to they won the Big East tournament, and they made it to the regional final, and they actually lost to, they were the first of many Christian Laettner daggers. But during the Big East tournament in 1990 and kind of leading into the NCAA tournament, I don't know if it was some local band or something, they kind of tweaked the Romantic song, What I Like About You, and changed it to What I Like About You, Con. Mm-hmm. So that got played to death for a couple of months in the spring of 1990. So that song has actually a special place for me, just because I'm not a UConn fan either, but believe it or not, I'm one of the few people live in the state that are not fans of the UConn men. But that I just find that funny. But I agree with you. Catchy song. I remember it on the radio. They had also another music video. And it's another song that you turn up and accidentally kind of give yourself a metal gas pedal foot, and kind of brings the energy level up. It's a good party song. It's a good bar song. When you're thinking the energy level in the bar is starting to kind of dip a bit, that's a good classic cut to throw on and get everybody all pumped up. So I like that pick. You know what's funny? I'm going to be honest. I'm breaking the fourth wall here. You were talking so much about Michael Jackson that I'd forgotten that you didn't have him at number 5, and you started talking about the Romantics. I'm like, why is he taking number 4? I thought it was my turn. And then I realized you didn't pick Michael Jackson, and you started talking about the Romantics. So I guess that's just my age. But yeah, great song. And actually good follow-up song, Talking in Your Sleep. Very solid song by them. That's a good cut. I like that cut. That's another good, catchy, early 80s, turn the radio up song. I like that. Good pick. I like that.
All right. Cruising along. Keep it going.
All right. Number 4. And now here is where I will put my second Billy Joel song. This is the one that actually did better chart-wise, even though I'm putting it higher. Even though it's actually not my favorite song on the album, my favorite song on the album is what we just heard, was I mentioned. You may be right. But this song, quick, groovy. It kind of reminds me of Queen's Another One Bites the Dust a little bit. Mm-hmm. My number 4 is Still Rock and Roll to Me.
Oh, yeah.
It's a good, quick 3-minute banger. It's actually not even a banger. It's just a smooth 3-minute song. And it's got the same kind of feel that Another One Bites the Dust does, where it's, dun, 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 dun. It's great live. It's a fast song. I think it's only I don't even think it's barely 3 minutes. It might be like 3:10 or something. So it's a fast listen, but it's got a good groove. It's an easy song to sing. Once again, it's got an inside joke. people wonder what the Miracle Mile is. It's actually a road in Long Island. But I just, it made good money. It was his first number one, and it really marked, again, to bring up that album again, it marked Glass Houses as just an incredible money-making album for him and a big, big, big favorite for the fans because it was a change of pace from the Stranger and 52nd Street. So, yes, I am the Billy fanboy. I may pick Billy every year this decade as well. I guess I got to stop after 93 though. So once we get into the mid to late 90s, if you invite me on after 93, I'm going to have to invent some Billy songs. But yeah, no, just a great song, quick, but good beat, good rhythm. Again, reminds me a lot of Queen's Another One Bites the Dust. Just has a good boom, boom, boom. It's got a good beat by Liberty DeVito as drummer. Yeah, it's a song that marks 1980 for him. It was his first number one. I think it won Song of the Year. It definitely won album. The album won Album of the Year. That I know for a fact. Just a great song, and one that Billy should be very proud of. And again, played on the radio to death. So number 4 on my list, still rock and roll to me, Billy Joel.
I figured that's the one you were referring to earlier, and it's in my honorable mentions. It really is just a really fun song. Everything about that song is pretty much flawless, right? I mean, you really can't nitpick it at all. It gets the job done from every single level. I think it's universally enjoyable. I think it's really hard to say anything negative about it. It's a really good song, a fun song. Probably, like you said, a little bit different than what he was doing up to that point. I think probably surprised a lot of people at the time. When they heard it, and heard that it was Billy Joel. And so I think, again, that's just a mark of true genius and true musicianship from him, to be able to take that turn and do something else, but still have it be successful and accepted pretty much by the masses. So I can't argue with you. Your Billy fandom is more than welcome on the show anytime.
Thank you. Andy might tell you something different. Andy might say something different.
You know what? I want to keep this show going, so maybe I'll have.
No. That's right. He knows. That's all right. No, he's all good.
Trying to get another year out of this thing. All right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
We're gonna cancel your show after one episode.
Don't worry.
I'll be like the Joey spinoff of the Pop Feed, right? What did that last? A couple episodes and then got canceled.
Joey.
I don't want to go down that route.
No, not at all.
All right.
That's funny.
I think so. It's my number 4. My number 4 is from a band that some people confuse and don't realize is a band, but it is a band that's probably almost guaranteed to come up on my next episode as well, because they're probably their favorite song of mine is from 1981. But 1980 also had 2 big hits by this band. I went with the one that I think is just better and the one that I enjoy more. A huge band. This is another one that my mom just played over and over again. A lot of different songs from this band, and I really gained a lot of appreciation for them. So thank you, Mom, for exposing me to a lot of the music that I'm talking about here. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have this show, to be honest with you. So my number 4 is "Call Me" by Blondie, which is just another song that has a really cool beat to it. It's one of those, like, if anyone on here, does Hurdle, and you need to identify the song within the first couple seconds, this is one of those, because as soon as the, comes on for "Call Me," you automatically know what song that is. I think the way that Debbie Harry sings it and delivers it, it's incredible. Again, one of those, I'm not sure anyone else could have done it justice the way that she did with Blondie. I love "Heart of Glass," which was a little bit earlier. I think that's a great Blondie song. Like I said, "Tide is High" also came out this year in 1980.
Yes, it did.
This one, to me, "Call Me," is just a little bit better of a song and more fun. This is one that you hear all the time. Like you mentioned, this will be at a bar. If I go out to karaoke, and there's usually, a woman in her over 40, one of the options is probably Call Me by Blondie. It seems to be. I hear this at karaoke quite often. And I think that, is a testament to just how well liked this song is. I think it's a good song. I think her vocals are incredible. And just a song that I heard probably way too much growing up. But I'm glad that I did.
I have that song higher.
Well, then you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do. So I will withhold my opinion, but yeah, and we don't have a lot of slots left. So where it is, who knows? We don't have a lot of slots left. So
you predicted that we'd have 6 that were the same. We're not going to get to 6, but it's good to know that we definitely have a few, crossovers.
Yes. All right, my number 3. Is one that is the first one that you've already mentioned, so I'll just put it. So my number 3 is where I have Magic by Olivia Newton-John. I have it at number 3.
Love that it's in your top 3.
I'm going to tell you something, Scott, and this is I have zero shame in saying this right here on this show. This might be more embarrassing for Andy Atherton than all the Billy talk, but he's a fan of some really bad movies. So I love Andy to death. So. When you look at I think it was actually the first year of the Golden Raspberry Awards, I think started that year. Xanadu probably won all of them. It's probably in the general Hollywood scheme of things, it's probably one of the worst movies ever. I think it's developed a cult following over the past 20 years. And I think maybe now that sadly, and she was like a legit angel, Olivia Newton-John. Could anyone ever say a bad thing about her? I mean, she had the perfect voice. She had those gorgeous blue eyes. She had that gorgeous blonde hair. She had great collarbones. she was gorgeous. And she looked amazing in something that showed off her arm. I mean, never mind. We don't want to go. Then Andy will really shut us off now. I loved Olivia Newton-John. I loved her in Grease. She had some good country stuff in the 70s. Xanadu, I think, was a little ambitious, and I think the movie kind of fell into its own pile of whatever. Having said that, when you look at some of the greatest soundtrack albums of all time, Xanadu's got to be at worst in the top 10. There is not one bad song on the Xanadu soundtrack. And the album's cut in half. I don't know if you know this or not, Scotty, but half the album is Olivia Newton-John, and half the album is a band that we're probably not going to mention tonight, but if you ever do any throwback 70s shows, I'd love to be on, because I will wax crazy about Electric Light Orchestra. ELO is a fantastic band. Jeff Lynne is a friggin', he's like the Paul Heyman of music in the 70s. He was an absolute mad scientist who mishmashed all sorts of things together and came up with unbelievable pop songs. And there's that album has Suddenly, which is a duet with Olivia Newton-John and Keith Richards. Oh God, Cliff Richard, not Keith Richards.
What a duet that would be!
Yeah, imagine that one. You'd keep them two in separate rooms. Cliff Richard, which is a song I'm going to mention in my. There's another Cliff Richard song I'm going to mention in my honorable mentions. On the ELO half of the album, there is a great song called All Over the World, which I actually will turn up in my car and sing. That's how much I love the song. And then the actual title track, Xanadu, is a great song. Magic, though, just kind of has that have to believe. Like, I remember the song playing. That's another one of those songs, like you said, that you think about from a time in your life. My mom had the tape, the cassette of Magic, and of the Xanadu. She had both. She had the vinyl and that's how much she loved the movie, the soundtrack. She likes the movie, too. But the vinyl stayed in the house. But in the summertime, when I had a pool, and so in the summertime when we would be out swimming, Magic always came on either the radio or came on my mom's Xanadu cassette tape, soundtrack tape. And that song just stuck with me. Love it or hate it, it is a groove. And it began what would be a pretty good first half of the decade for ONJ. She like pulled the ripcord after this one.
Yeah.
Obviously, Grease speaks for itself. Her movies after this would be a little, but at least in a lot of the movies, the music is great. And I got to be honest. When you said Magic, I said, yeah, this is a show I'm going to listen to all the time now. I was going to anyway, but now I officially am. Even more than anything else, the fact that we love Olivia Newton-John. I mean, the song is great. It's got a good feel. It's another one of those. I mean, I'm sure Jeff Lynne helped on that too. The twangy guitar in the beginning and her voice, and it's a great pop song. It's a great pop song that I think, kind of like Michael with Off the Wall, I think gets forgotten because the movie is so horrendous that anything off that album gets totally forgotten in history because the movie is crap. But and again, I think now, not that it's streaming anywhere, and don't even ask me how much the Blu-ray's worth. It's probably not as crappy now as maybe it was in 1980, but that soundtrack album, absolutely. If you are a pop fan and you love ONJ, you need to own, or at least have it on your Apple Music or your Spotify list. You need to have the soundtrack to Xanadu. It is a classic soundtrack album. You have no idea. When I made my list and I had it that high, I'm like, he's going to laugh me out of this building. And then you had it, and I'm like, holy crap.
Probably not the one you thought that we'd share, huh?
No, absolutely not. No way. I was thinking, like, I'm sure maybe Off the Wall. I don't know. Maybe this. I don't know. But, yeah. I totally am not ashamed to love that song, love that soundtrack, and love Olivia Newton-John. Totally.
This is great. I love this. I was not expecting so much love and respect for Olivia Newton-John, but I'm really glad that we have that on here collectively. So
absolutely. Yep.
Obviously, it was on my list, so I certainly don't have much more to add, and I can't argue it. So I'll just move on to my number 3, which maybe, I don't know if I want to call it controversial, but I could see people listening to this and going, really? That's in his top 3, and Rock With You was an honorable mention? Sure, if I take a little flack for this one, I understand. But I just think this song is so catchy, and every time I hear it, I just want to belt it out, like I think most people do. But it's one of those that you probably don't share that fact with people. My number 3 is Fame by Irene Cara. Because it's just one of those just sort of uplifting, sort of motivational anthems. I'm going to live forever. I'm going to learn how to fly. Like it's just fun. And it's a song that I think it's inspiring. It really set the tone, I think, for a lot of other songs in the 80s that kind of sound similar, that are in that same vein. Those really sort of inspirational pop hits, that are kind of belted out by the singer, that are fun to sing along with. You usually can't ever hit the same note, so it doesn't sound as good when you're singing it, but you really don't care. You roll the windows down, or maybe you roll the windows up, depending on how ashamed you are. But you just listen to it and you're belting out the notes, and it's just a lot of fun. And when it's over, you're like, I kind of want to listen to it again. That was a fun experience, and I think I want more of that in my life. And so, for that reason, I can't really put my finger on why it's this high on my list. But as I was measuring it up against some of the other songs, I went, if I had to listen to one of these 2 songs right now, I'd rather listen to Fame. So that's why it's my number 3.
That's another one of those songs, kind of like Upside Down. Now, I don't hate Irene Cara by any stretch. My point is, that's one that I probably wouldn't have sought out when I was a kid, but that's another one I got to credit my mom for, because she loved the movie. She loved the TV show. So when that was another soundtrack she bought. So that song, but again, another like 80s-y catchy feel, that, I mean, that's 80s right there. That is 80s. That riff at the beginning is totally the decade. That early half of the decade. Totally. And she had a killer voice. She might be number 2 behind Kenny Loggins for coolest movie songs, because she would do another one later in the decade that I'm sure when you get to that year will be talked about. So yeah, I like that pick. I think it was another one that dominated the charts. Again, better movie than Xanadu. Probably shouldn't have made it a TV show, but that's the kind of thing they were doing back then. But yeah, my mom liked all that kind of schlock, so I was okay with it. But that's a good pick, because that's another one like, and you're like, did I just do this to Irene? What is wrong with me? And why do I want to hear it again? Like, it's exactly what it is.
That's what it is. I just want to like throw on a cape and just start running through the streets like a superhero when that song comes on.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's a groovy pick, man. Again, it's a lot like for me, it's a lot like the Diana Ross pick. Not a song I'd seek out, but if I had 80s on 8 Sirius XM on, and and this happens to me a lot, but it would happen to me with Fame and probably Upside Down. I'd be like, and then it would fade. I'd be like, all right, I'm now going to go to my Apple Music and I'm going to listen to it again. It's like, so I love that pick. Again, that's one that I have to credit. I have to credit my mom for, because she loved Fame. She loved the movie. She loved the soundtrack and the TV show. So that's another one that like you said, you're thinking to yourself, why am I grooving to the song? And why do I not want to stop grooving to the song? Totally agree with you 100% on that. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And if you're listening, you probably feel the same way. You just might be scared to admit it. It's okay. You're amongst friends here. You can admit that you jammed to Irene Cara.
Totally. All right. What am I on? Number 2. Number 2. This is where I have Call Me by Blondie. I have it at number 2.
Love it.
It was the number 1 Billboard song that year, which I don't ever totally agree with. I don't think it was the best song of that year. Is it an awesome song? Well, yes, I have it at number 2.
Clearly, it's your number 2. So.
It's my number 2, but it's my number 1. My number 1 is going to probably be very different than anything we've listened to, we've talked about tonight, but which is pretty great. But another movie song, of course, that song came from the American Gigolo soundtrack, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody's watched the show on Showtime. The one with what is it, John Bernthal? It's good. It's not for anybody that's never ever seen American Gigolo with Richard Gere. I would watch it. It's pretty dark. It's a good movie. It's about a gigolo. But that song's in it. It's in a good spot in the movie, and it's also on the soundtrack. So, and the other thing too is, Scotty, I'm not the biggest Blondie fan. Like, there's very few songs that I would that I turn off on the radio. Believe by Cher, Smooth, and I love Santana, but that Rob Thomas song, shoot me in the head. I have a friend. Now, it doesn't for me, but actually it's Dr. G. I might as well say it. Dr. G from the Saturday Special. He cannot stand Hotel California by the Eagles anymore, because it's one of those songs he feels every time it comes on the radio. Yeah. It's like 15 times a day. That's how I feel about Heart of Glass. Is it a landmark song for them? Of course it is. To the point where I feel like when I was a kid, whether it was MTV, because it did have a video, or on my local rock station in the New Haven area where I grew up, or, New York radio, Heart of Glass got played to death in my childhood. So I like Call Me anyway, because it's not Heart of Glass. But Debbie Harry's got one of those voices that marks time again. She is the siren of new wave and punk. But Blondie, similar to the Ramones to a certain extent, figured out that we have to do songs that we have to get songs outside of, CBGBs and the piss-smelling toilets with no doors. We need to get out into the mainstream. That's what Call Me is. I feel like Heart of Glass was a good song, but it kind of still fit that disco, that punky disco kind of thing. Call Me, in my opinion, like you said, is a legit pop hit. And I think it was the hit that kind of got Blondie that mainstream. And again, it didn't hurt that it was in a great movie of 1982. So I love the fact that you had it on your list because I think being on the soundtrack helped it sell, which is why I think Billboard had it at number 1 at the end of the year. And I think that sadly they wouldn't have much of a window left. The guitarist got sick. Her boyfriend, I think they got married. I can't remember his name, Chris. I can't think of his last name, but he had some strange disease, and then he had some disorder, and they ended up like breaking up or taking a hiatus for like 4 or 5 years, and by then music had changed, kind of thing. It was really sad what happened to Blondie after like 82. And they were revolutionary because then in a couple of years, I'm sure I think it came out in 82. So your guest or you may bring up Rapture, which is many consider like the first legit rap song because she pretty much freestyles in that song in the back end. But
Rapture will be on my list when it's appropriate.
Okay, there you go. But excuse me, Call Me is just one of those good explosive pop songs for Blondie and for Debbie Harry at a time when they needed it, when punk was starting to kind of like close the door kind of thing, you know? So I am a giant, I heard my door open. I hope I'm not getting mugged. Imagine that. Oh my God. My number 1 song is no. No.
Someone heard your disdain for Heart of Glass and they're like,
exactly. Yeah. Some punk fans are throwing glass at me. No, but just a big fan of Blondie. And I think that's a great song. And because I think it marks time for them as a legit pop act. And I think it earns its, but there's one song in my eyes that's just a little bit better for 1980, but I love Call Me. Good pick.
Yeah, likewise, again, it's pretty much a perfect pop song in my opinion. I just think it's so well done. I think her vocals on it are incredible. Number 2 for me, before we get into our number 1s, my number 2, I feel like my number 2 would be on most people's lists for 1980 because I think it's probably one of the most well-known songs of that year. I think it's another one of those songs that is pretty much everywhere and has stood the test of time. Here we are, almost 43 years later, and I think this song still resonates, and it's because it's 100% unequivocally because of the beat of this song. To me, it's a better version of Cars by Gary Newman, and it's Funky Town by Lip Sync. I think it's one of the most popular songs of the 80s decade, let alone just 1980. I mean, this is a song that is immediately recognizable. You say Funky Town, and everyone thinks. It's just so much fun. This is the easiest song you could ever possibly sing along with, right? I remember singing along with this as a kid, probably before I could even say complete sentences, because it's just that easy to sing along to. And who doesn't want that in a fun song? This is the type of song you put on a road trip, and parents will enjoy it, kids can listen to it, grandma's in the back jamming out to it, because I think it's universally likable. I don't think there's anything about this song that's not fun, that you really can't get behind. Again, is it the best song ever written? No, it's nowhere near the best song ever written. But I think that it's just so popular to me. It's been in a ton of movies, and it's all over the place. It's really fun. I knew I had to have this song on my list, and when I was looking at my list, I said, wow, I really like that song more than I thought, because it crept all the way up to number 2 for me.
Yeah, that's one of those songs that was constantly on the radio. And again, it's got the 1980 seems to be the year of the opening beat.
Yes.
1980 was the year where like the first 10 seconds of a song made the song. And that's a perfect example. I have that on my honorable mention because, again, great radio hit, played in the summertime. One of those songs by the pool where you can kind of jam out in the pool kind of thing. Yeah, I like that. I like your thinking when it comes to your pop songs, because it's got to be something that stays in your head, and if in a good way, of course. Then there's some songs that are total earworms, but in this case, You're talking about a song that is easy to sing. Talking about. Like, it's very easy to sing. It stays in your head.
Gotta move on. It's just,
yeah, exactly. It's just, and it's almost, it's, you know what I like about that one too? It gives you a little taste of what life was like in the late 70s without feeling worn out. You know, at a time when people were burning Saturday Night Fever records, which made my mom cry, but and all that kind of stuff. Funky Town was able to kind of fit into the 80s window to start the decade and still have a feel of what life was like at Studio 54 and in the late 70s. So I like that song because I feel like it transcends generations and transcends decades. That is an awesome pick. Yeah, I like that song.
Agree. I think it's the first song I can ever remember where it actually made me want to go to the place that the song was talking about. I wanted to go to Funky Town when I was a kid.
Exactly.
I don't know where it is. I don't know what happens there, but I want to go. Like, they asked, "Won't you take me to?" And I'm like, "Yes, please take me there." Like, beam me up, Scotty. I want to go. Take me to Funky Town.
Yes, I agree 100%.
It's time for your number one, Scott.
We have gotten here, and I'm surprised that I have this number one, believe it or not. But when I thought about it, I went, I love the song. It's a band that I've learned to appreciate as I've gotten older, because they're a band that they're not hard to like when you're younger, but they're hard to understand when you're younger. They're one of those great bands that killed it. They were, they came out in the 60s, killed it in the 70s, arguably one of the greatest albums ever. And then they did this album, which was connected to a movie. And this song kind of gave them that pop. Again, another song by a rock proggy artist that hit the money time because it was a catchy tune. So my number one for 1980 is Another Brick in the Wall by Pink Floyd.
Oh, yes.
That song got me to like Pink Floyd, because when I was 8 years old, and again, just to give somebody some background for those that don't know, I am the youngest of four. I have two older brothers and an older sister. And one thing about my family is everybody likes something different. My oldest brother was the arena rock guy, Styx, Journey, Cheap Trick, that kind of thing. My sister was the Prince, Hall & Oates, Journey kind of thing. And then my other brother was the metalhead. He was the Iron Maiden crew. He had the Eddie tapestry on the wall that glowed in the dark and scared the crap out of me when I was 10 years old. So I was blessed as a kid to have all of these different genres. But when my brother, and I was like 8, when my brother first played me Dark Side of the Moon, I'm like, what the hell is this? When you're 8 years old, you're like, I don't even know what are they talking about? Like, the songs were too just weird, And I feel like when you're young, you don't appreciate a band like Pink Floyd or a band like Rush, or Yes, those kind of proggy bands of the 70s who were kind of artsy fartsy. You could appreciate the musical aspect of it, but trying to figure out what they're trying to say. I mean, Roger Waters is way out in another world. But there was something about The Wall that changed it for me, that got me to understand. And that song, I remember as a kid, again, another "We don't need no dun 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 dun." Like I said, I feel like the theme of our episode tonight is riffs that stay in your head in a good way. And that's another one. Dun, 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 I don't even know, like the guy yelling at the end, how could you have your pudding if you don't eat your meat? I'm like, I don't even know what that means, but I don't know. But then I watched The Wall, which is another movie that, you got to kind of be in a certain frame of mind to enjoy. But the soundtrack is great. And that, to me, was the song that kind of stamped 1980 as the beginning of a decade of such diversity for different genres. And that's the song, just like Call Me for Blondie. I feel like this song kind of got Pink Floyd that pop exposure that they probably didn't have, even with great albums like Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here, because those are for the proggy guys who, like the nerd rockers who liked bands like Rush. But then you get to now, and now you have a song that is in a more universal stage. And that's why, to me, it is the most memorable song for me and the number one song of 1980, because for Pink Floyd, arguably one of the greatest bands of all time, again, you needed that one song to bring it to a pop level that gives you a broader audience. And that, to me, is another brick in the wall. Even if at first you listen to it, you have no idea what it means, it's okay. You'll get to it eventually, so long as you enjoy it and you enjoy the way it sounds. And that's how I feel about that, and that's why I think it's the best song in 1980, because it gave pop listeners a chance to really take in a band that probably either never heard of or thought was going to go over your head, and instead entertained you with a killer song, killer guitar by David Gilmour, and just haunting lyrics, and just a great, intelligent song from a great, intelligent band.
That's such a great pick. That's such a great pick for number one. I think that a lot of people would agree with you. It's an incredible song. It's a song that evokes emotions in you when you listen to it, and you're not quite sure why. You're not quite sure how to feel, but you know that you're feeling something.
Yep.
It really is a great. It's almost haunting, that song, and
yes.
I don't know if that's because, for me, obviously, I was born in 1989, so. For me growing up, my first kind of exposure to that was a cover that was in the movie The Faculty that came out in 1999, which was like a teen horror movie with Josh Hartnett and Elijah Wood. And they did a cover of, there was a cover of that song. And I remember seeing the music video on MTV, that went along with the movie, and just thinking, wow, this song is so cool. And I didn't realize that, that it was a Pink Floyd song. And then once I did, I kind of went back and said, I need to listen to the Pink Floyd version, of course, which is obviously superior and the better version. But so I think my connotation of that is it's darker and it's haunting because it was in kind of a horror movie. So I kind of that's synonymous for me. I kind of lump the two together. But even independently, that song it's really good. Yeah, we don't need no education. Teacher, leave those kids alone. It's what you want to go into school and say. Also, it's like I want to just go into school, and it's got that school's out for the summer type of vibe.
Yeah.
This is exactly how I feel. We don't need no education. Hey, teacher, leave those kids alone, right? But you don't actually feel like you're going to get in trouble. But you want
right?
And so it really is a song that just every time I listen to it, I guess with the kids, I get in my feels. When I listen to it, because it really is a song that evokes a lot of emotion, and I think that's the mark of a great song and a great band. If a song can elicit that sort of emotional reaction from you, and that's what I get from The Wall. That's an incredible pick. I have no qualms whatsoever about that pick.
Cool.
I think
Thank you.
Is a really great pick. I'm sure that you're not the only person that would have that in the number one spot for 1980, because what you mentioned about kind of setting the tone for the diversity of the decade, I think you hit the nail on the head with that.
I'm fascinated now. I'm fascinated where you're going right now. I'm fascinated. Not sure.
I don't know how this became my number. I think that if I was talking about this beforehand with someone and kind of compiling a list in my head, I don't think this would have initially been in my number one spot. But the more and more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I love this song. And the lyrics, I think, are really good, and I just love the way that it's sung. It's a band that we haven't even talked about. There's a method to my madness. There's a reason that I started out my list with Air Supply, Out of Love. Sort of that, we talked about sort of romantic, scorned love ballad, because I bookmarked my list. Because my number one is Keep On Loving You by REO Speedwagon. Which I think is probably one of the best love ballads ever written and ever performed. I don't know what it is about this song, but I just think it's beautifully written, beautifully sung. I think that it's every single emotion you feel, probably from ages 11 to 25, encompassed in a song. And anyone who's ever, lost someone they were in love with, or, went through a breakup, I mean, and you're still longing for that person, this is that song for you. And I think that this is the song that you sit, with the tub of ice cream, and you're crying and you're on the couch and you don't really want anyone to know how you're feeling. But to me, that's the song that plays when this happens in your life. And I just, even talking about it right now and just hearing the lyrics in my head, I just think it's just so well written. I think it really does touch all of the emotional feelings that you're going through, when you are young and in love or out of love, or, whatever the case is. But I love this song. When I said that I love you, I meant that I loved you forever. I mean, that's such an iconic lyric to me. I don't want to quit. I just want to keep on loving you. It's what more can you ask for? I absolutely love this song, and that's why it's number one for me with a bullet.
I forgot that this song actually came out in late 80s, so technically, because every time I hear this song, I think of 1981 because that's when the album came out, but
I think it came out in December of 1980, actually.
Yeah, so it technically counts. I would probably, I'll tell you right now, I would put this song, and this is a minutia thing, but I would put this song in my top 3 for 1981. So I'm fine with that. So you're not getting zero argument out of me at all. Because I would put it in 1981, but I probably have it at number 2. So number 1 or number 2. So I'm not going to, that song, because I remember the album. First of all, the album High Infidelity is great. And I remember because this was, you're absolutely right too, Scotty, because this was my brother's 8th grade year. He was in 8th grade and I was in 2nd grade. And I remember this song playing on the radio, and he had pool parties with girls, and it was pretty hot and everything. But I remember this song reminding me of him because it more obviously got hot in the spring of 81. But when it came out that winter, I remember my brother had the album, and it definitely that's another haunting one, Yes. Any song about love is haunting in one way or another. And I will never say a bad thing about REO Speedwagon. I saw them live and they were fantastic live. And that album and that song, Take It on the Run on that album? I think it is. Time for Me to Fly, I think, is on that album. Yeah, it's just, that's one of those albums that just up and down the dial is just one amazing cut after another. And I love Kevin Cronin's voice. Yeah. Zero argument out of me, brother. That song, they put that in the yacht rock list, which I don't know if that makes REO Speedwagon happy, but that's another one that I could listen to, kind of like we said earlier about Diana Ross. That's another song that it's on the radio. I'll listen to it. I'm gonna listen to it again. That's how much I love that song.
I don't think I've ever listened to that song once and stopped. Yeah, I need to play it on a loop almost. To me, it's that good.
Yeah, absolutely. I am very, very pleased. I think that song, and again, I don't know how your criteria will be for future episodes, but obviously songs carry over. So whoever you have on for the 1981 episode, most certainly will use it. And and that's fine. It's just the way music goes. But I love that pick, man. I heart you for that one. I do. Cause that album is amazing. That song is amazing. That's another one that I get from my older siblings that I love that much. So thank you. Thank you for reminding me what a great song that is.
Yes, it really is. Thank you. I mean, we made it, Scott. We made it through our list here. Honestly, collectively, I think we probably have 18 of the best 25 songs of the year. Right? I mean, between both of our lists. I feel like we covered so much. We only had, only Magic and Call Me were duplicates. So,
right.
All of these songs uniquely, I think, would be pretty much universally on most people's list. I would say maybe not for their top 10, but if you did a top 25, I would imagine most of these, if not all of them, would be in there.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. I had a couple of honorable mentions, if I may.
Let me know kind of what just missed, and what else you had.
I had 4 songs that just missed. One is another groovy R&B song that gives me kind of the feels, and that's "Shining Star" by the Manhattans.
It's a good song.
I love that song. Just another good groovy kind of, sexy, that like you want to play when you're, when it's the, when the lady wants to come up for a nightcap kind of thing. When the mood strikes, exactly. When the lady comes up for a nightcap, and, another one is "Little Genie" by Elton John. Another great. I love early '80s Elton. That, Blue Eyes, just a bunch of greats. "I'm Still Standing," which I'm sure will be a song that's talked about in a future episode. I love "Little Genie." It's a great song. This one, if you've never heard of it, or if anybody hasn't heard it, this is another one that's a heartbreaker, and it gets you in the feels. And it might have been his last hit before the band broke up. And that's "Please Don't Go" by KC and the Sunshine Band. Another one of those songs where you're like, don't go away. You're like pleading. It's like, oh my God, the poor bastard. I feel so terrible for him. It's like one of those.
I don't expect that from the same band that did, Boogie Shoes, right?
Boogie, yeah, or Get Down Tonight, And then my last one is, because it's a yacht rock staple, is "Biggest Part of Me" by Ambrosia. I love that song. Another one that now that I'm reminded of it when it plays on the Yacht Rock channel on Sirius XM all the time, is another one that definitely not probably at the level of a top 10, but definitely one song that shouldn't be forgotten in history.
That's a really good song.
Yeah, so that's my honorable mentions.
I prefer "How Much I Feel" for Ambrosia.
I love "How Much I Feel" too.
Yes,
by
them, which is,
love that too.
77 or 78, but
yeah, yep.
That's the album before. But yeah, "Biggest Part of Me," that's a really good song. Ambrosia is actually probably an underrated band in my opinion.
Yes, I agree.
And I don't think they get talked about a lot.
No, I agree.
I have a couple as well that just missed. One of them is "Shook Me All Night Long," AC/DC.
Back in Black. What an album.
Yeah, it's that's a fun song. That's one that you kind of hear at a bar or even at a ball game. Like it's I mean, they have so many hits. It's really hard. It's hard to escape AC/DC. I feel like if you go outside, in some way, shape, or form, you probably hear an AC/DC song, even if it's someone just driving past you.
Yep.
They're just everywhere. But "Shook Me All Night Long," I think, is this fun song.
Yes, I agree.
My other ones, I had to put a Journey song somewhere because it's Journey, right? And I mean, they're one of the quintessential bands of the 80s. So I chose "Any Way You Want It." I think "Any Way You Want It" I don't think it's one of their best songs necessarily, but I think it's a good song. I think it's fun.
It is.
When I was in college, we used to have, this is back when Rock Band was out on like the PS2, PS3, and we used to have Rock Band nights, and one of the songs they had was "Any Way You Want It." And it was just easy. It was an easy song to sing. Anyone, it was kind of scared to take the mic. It's like, oh, just do "Any Way You Want It." And they go, oh, yeah, okay, that's easy enough. Easy to sing, but fun song. Not one of my favorite Journey songs, but I still think it's really good. I still enjoy that song.
Yep.
And then the last one for me is "Hit Me With Your Best Shot" by Pat Benatar. I love Pat Benatar. I'll definitely talk about her on a later episode, just because there's one song by her that I think is one of the best of the entire decade, and I know I'll have that very high on my, I think, 1983 list. But I really enjoy Pat Benatar. Heartbreaker was 79, I believe, so that probably would have made my list if it was 1980, because I love Heartbreaker. But "Hit Me With Your Best Shot" is really good too. Another song that's just fun, right? Most people know that song. They know the "You're a Real Tough Cookie with a Long History," that line. Most people kind of know how that song starts and know the "Hit Me With Your Best Shot, Fire Away." Really catchy, fun song. Wanted to shout out Pat Benatar because she's one of my favorite artists of the 80s. I think she has an incredible discography. So almost made my list, but I knew that Pat Benatar would come up later on this show, so I figured I can hold off on that.
Yeah. I'm actually, while you said that, I'm on Wikipedia and I was looking up a specific song, my favorite Pat Benatar song of all time, and I was looking to see if you and I were going to be on the same wavelength, and we're probably not because, and I won't spoil it, but my favorite Pat Benatar song actually came out in September of '82, so it's probably different than yours. But it's still, I'll tell you off air what it is, but I don't want to ruin it in case I'm on again down the line. But sure. It's probably different than yours, but I'll tell you what it is. But I whoever you have on for the next 3 episodes, both of you are going to have Pat Benatar all the way down the line because she kills it the next 3 years from 80 or 4 years, I guess. I think from 81 to 85, she absolutely kills it. So, okay, good picks. Yes.
Yeah, I think universally good picks. I really don't, like I said, not just with your number one, but I don't really have any qualms with your list at all. I think we covered a lot of the best songs of the decade. I think we covered some different genres. We've got the remnants of disco in there. We've got love ballads. We've got Queen, Billy Joel. We touched on, most of the top artists of that year, Michael Jackson, Blondie. So, very diverse and good list. I think, right alongside one another. There wasn't really too much debate about whether or not any of the songs belonged on the list, which is always nice to have. I think it's good to respect, other people's tastes. It seems like our tastes are kind of similar, so I'm kind of happy to see that we only had 2 that were, they were on both lists. You predicted 6, so I'm glad that it was only 2, and that we were able to talk about a lot more songs than maybe we expected to.
Yep. And I had to double check because I thought we both whiffed on a big one, both of us. But fortunately, it was not eligible because I just said to myself, oh, crap, neither of us mentioned Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang, which is obviously iconic. But then I looked and it actually came out in September of '79, so we're lucky. We both didn't make it. So if it wasn't legally on the list, but so I'm good. So I feel better now.
Yeah, if it was, I'm sure that'd be pretty high for both of us.
Yeah, definitely. No, there's no doubt. But it fell short by 4 months, so now I feel better.
Yeah, same. So. Yeah, that would have been a huge oversight.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I don't really anticipate my show getting into hip hop for another 6 episodes at least.
Probably.
Before that really, maybe Run DMC is probably where it might start to become consistent on the list, maybe every single episode. So I'm looking forward to that, obviously, because I love hip hop music and I'm very excited to get to there. But before you can do that, we have to get through the very diverse early 80s, which I'm really excited about because the next few years coming up there's some real heavy hitters. You look at 1983, 1984, some people say are some of the best years in music of all time.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited to get into those episodes.
I'm looking forward to hearing it.
We got through 1980, Scott. Thank you so much for being on. Please give any closing remarks and thoughts that you have. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I hope that to not only have you back on, but to also have you as an avid listener. And please feel free to argue with any of the listeners list or my list, in upcoming episodes, because I think that just makes it for some very great discussion and dialogue, amongst us and amongst everyone in the quad pods and everything else. So really excited to have you on it. It's really been great. And, the floor is yours to, say whatever it is, plug anything you'd like, please. And, you can take us out of here.
Well, first off, Scott, thank you. This has been an honor and a privilege. I love being maiden guest on shows. It's an honor to be thought of that way. So it means a lot to me. I appreciate it. I love talking music. I could talk about music as long as I could talk about wrestling. So, I'm going to listen every episode. I hope I will be invited on again. I'd love to be on again. And I just hope, that everybody listens because, nobody likes to age shame. And, for all you Taylor Swift fans out there, she's okay, but she's not Blondie. Sorry, not happening. She's not Diana Ross. She's not, Pat Benatar. She's not Pat Benatar. She's not even Barbara Streisand. And she even had a song that and I'm not a big fan of hers at all, but she even had a song in 1980 I moderately liked. But, yeah, no, this has been great, Scott. Keep up the good work. I look forward to future episodes with some great guests, and I look forward to being on again. Well, you can follow me on Twitter at Scott C. Podfather. More importantly, please follow the brand on Twitter, just like you follow the pop brand. Please follow the wrestling brand at PTBN Wrestling. We're covering all sorts of stuff. We have a great cachet of variety over on the wrestling feed, just like here on the pop feed. Scott, I look forward to you walking across the sidewalk because you sound like we could talk a little Shawn Michaels for a couple hours, and no problem talking about that.
Listen, I haven't even started. Don't get me started on Triple H too, man. I know your love for Triple H.
That's it. It's over. You're in the Hall of Fame now. You're in the Hall of Fame now. Interesting tidbit. I hate to cross paths right now, but everybody makes fun of Shawn Michaels' lazy eye. I found out today. Do you know where he got that? He didn't have that his whole life. Kane gave that to him at Unforgiven 2004. Really? I didn't know that. Yeah,
I know that it wasn't. I know that it wasn't prevalent in like the 90s. You look at New Generation Shawn, and it's not there. Like it's definitely not.
I was watching some YouTube clip today. I know, weird way to end the show, but since you mentioned Shawn, he got hit with Kane hit him with something in their match at, I think it was Unforgiven 04, and he had some surgery, and he had something with he's got something with his eyelid or whatever, and it caused a muscle to cause his left eye to point funny like a lazy eye. So weird. I never knew that. I never knew it because suddenly I look up and wow, Shawn's got a lazy eye. Like, where'd that come from? Because if you look at him look at him in the 90s, he had no problem at all. But anyway, yeah. So please, Scott C. Podfather on Twitter, but most importantly at PTBN Wrestling. We have great programming from everybody. Everybody works so hard, whether it's the PTB Wrestling Network, the Pop Experience, the No So, and of course on the No So you could find the Jenny position. We all work so hard, we do it for nothing, and we just love to entertain. I was in radio for 11 years and I loved it. I love spinning music. I love doing sports. I love doing news. That's why I love to podcast, because I just love to entertain, inform, and have fun. And that's all we do here, and it's great to see new, exciting programming here on all of our feeds. This show is going to be amazing. I'm already thinking of ideas for you for future things. See, you let the rabbit out of the hat tonight, my friend, because I got stuff for you that's just going to blow your mind. So we'll have to talk in the future. But it is an honor. Thank you again. It was so much fun. I look forward to, again, future guests that you have, and I look forward. I'd be blessed to be on with you again. So, thank you. It's been real. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely, thank you, and thank you, you and everyone else in Place to Be Nation for what you guys do and the entertainment factor. I've listened to the podcast, a lot of flights, a lot of car rides, bus rides, wherever I'm going. That's usually one of my first options. I'm so happy to be becoming a part of the family here, after being a fan for so long, and being welcomed with open arms is really great. It really speaks to everyone as a person. Can't wait to one day get on the flagship. Right after this, I'm actually going to fire up some Unforgiven 08, that just dropped.
Yes,
so
it did.
I'm excited. I get excited every time you and JT, drop something there. So happy when you guys finally pick back up in 07, because I've been waiting for that for a while. And yeah, you I've definitely had you back on. You mentioned something, and I want to just put that out there to anyone that's listening. Look, if you want to come on the show, please let me know. Reach out to me, however you want, social media wise, or just reach out to anyone, any Place to Be Nation, and I'm sure we can get that set up. But if you have a specific gear that you really want to do and you're passionate, let me know. I'll put you on the list for that gear. If you really like 1994 for whatever reason, or 1987, whatever your vice is, and whatever you feel like you have really strong opinions about, or you really want to talk about, let me know if you want to do a specific year, and it's yours. If you reach out to me, now the first one, that's it. That's your year. Same goes for you, Scott. I know you could give me every single year. So, but
oh God, no one's going to want that much of me.
Yeah,
no one's going to want that much of me.
For me, 1997 is kind of like, that's my big, like, quintessential year. But, you know, if anyone has one of those, certainly reach out, let me know, and I'm happy to have you on for that specific year. Or if not, you want to come on and you want me to surprise you, let me know with that too, and then I'll throw you a random one, and, you know, challenge yourself, right, to you know, pull out some stuff from a random year, 1991. No one really thinks of that one right after. So, really excited for this. I can't wait to you know, have more episodes. This is going to be monthly, so if you're listening, you know, look out for us on the pop feed once a month, and you know, we'll definitely do some promoting for it so that you know where to find it. But I just hope that you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you keep on loving this podcast and this show, because we got a long ways to go and a lot of things to learn.